Have you ever noticed that some people seem to win silently, while you struggle twice as hard to receive half the recognition? Machiavelli would say that this is not chance, it's method. And perhaps no one has told you yet, but there is a forbidden secret, hidden for centuries, that separates those who master their own destiny from those who live obeying the expectations of others. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that the world has never rewarded the kindest. It has rewarded the most strategic. And that is precisely why many of your efforts are not generating returns, because you are playing by invented rules, while the real game works by other laws. The truth that almost no one talks about, because it's uncomfortable, is that the end justifies the means when the end is to recover your inner strength. You were trained to avoid being hated, to seek approval, to act with an appearance of virtue. But this only made you predictable, emotionally accessible, and often invisible. Meanwhile, less prepared, less intelligent, and even less ethical people become unbeatable because they use a simple principle that Machiavelli repeated. It is better to be feared than loved when respect is at stake. And respect is the basis of all power. What you will learn here is not empty motivation. It's strategy. It's virtù and fortuna applied to real life. It's decisions based on real human nature, not idealistic fantasies. You will understand how to use silence as a weapon, how to nip hesitation in the bud, how to create a presence that dominates environments, and above all, how to become someone who commands his own loyal armies, even if those armies are composed only of self-control, mental clarity, and the calculated use of force. What is about to begin is not a script, it's a rite of passage. And if you keep reading to the end, you'll understand why so many spend their lives trying to be strong, but only a few become invincible. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now, not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. He always notices that most people spend their lives waiting for the right moment, as if life were generous enough to offer personalized invitations for every important step. Machiavelli already warned that those who act with politics guided by reality, not by ideals, understand that the right moment doesn't exist, it's created. Hesitation is born from that secret desire not to err, to maintain the appearance of impeccable virtue, as if any imperfect movement were an unforgivable crime. But those who master real human nature see something else. While one hesitates, another advances, and whoever advances gains ground, even if they advance crookedly. They know that the end justifies the means when the goal is to break through one's own stagnation. People confuse prudence with paralysis, when in fact prudence is acting with the calculated use of force, not remaining immobile. Those who hesitate become spectators of their own lives, hoping that something will happen, but nothing happens. And it is precisely there that someone weaker but bolder takes the place that could have been theirs. He observes that less prepared people often win simply because they appear more confident. Not because they are better, but because they have understood Machiavelli's cold logic. It is better to be feared than loved when the game involves immediate respect. Confidence, in this scenario, is not a characteristic, it's a weapon. And a weapon works even when it's just an appearance. In practice, this means that the insecure but proactive individual conquers territories that the perfectly hesitant person will never see. And it's curious how, at work, in relationships, or even in small social gatherings, there's always someone who advances as if carrying their own loyal armies behind them. In reality, it's just posture, it's just narrative, it's just decision. Performed confidence is still perceived confidence, and perception moves the world. When someone walks with virtue and fortune by their side, not because they actually have it, but because they act as if they do, the environment responds. And this response silently changes destinies. He understands that hesitation is a deadly weakness because it reveals to the world exactly what you try to hide: doubt, fear, and a lack of self-direction. Machiavelli would insist that decisions based on real human nature need to include constant adaptability, not the illusion of perfect security. Confidence should be treated as an instrument, sharp, strategic, available to be used when needed. A person who speaks clearly, moves with intention, and acts without asking permission creates a magnetic effect on the environment. And if someone wants to apply this today, he would recommend something simple. Choose a small action that you've been putting off and do it today, no matter how small. It could be sending that message you've been avoiding, studying that subject you always postpone, starting that project that's been sitting in a drawer. Actions create confidence, not the other way around. And when the action becomes a habit, something interesting begins to happen. An inner voice begins to be replaced by another, firmer and less subservient one. He knows that the greatest prison is not physical, nor financial, nor social. It's psychological. And this prison begins when someone is conditioned to seek approval for everything. Machiavelli would say that living to please is ignoring politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Because in reality, nobody respects those who bow down too much. Most people have learned since childhood to maintain an appearance of virtue, to avoid being hated, as if that would guarantee security. But in the end, it only creates the inner servant, that weak voice that asks permission, that hesitates, that asks, "Is this okay?" This servant doesn't think, it obeys. It worries about being loved when, often, it would be better to be feared, or at least respected. It never dares to use a little force, even when the moment demands calculated use of force. And it forgets that the end justifies the means when the goal is to recover one's own inner authority. That's why whoever doesn't eliminate this servant lives as a guest in their own life, always asking permission to exist. The most revealing thing is understanding that that hesitant voice isn't you. It's the programming. It's the servant. It's the emotional memory of a time when you depended on approval to survive. Machiavelli would remind us that decisions based on true human nature require constant adaptability, and that means breaking with old conditioning whenever necessary. When someone is about to shrink, the strategy is to do the exact opposite. Expand. It's speaking more firmly when the voice wants to disappear. It's entering the room with more presence when the body wants to become invisible. It's acting like someone carrying their own loyal armies, even if the soul is still learning to believe it. Little by little, the inner servant loses strength, like a fired employee who still tries to enter the building out of habit. And when it tries to return with phrases like, "Better not, don't risk it, wait a little longer," you respond with action. Because action is the only language that dismantles conditioning. Eliminating everything that diminishes you is a surgical process, not an impulsive one. Machiavelli would call it the calculated use of force, removing thoughts, habits, and even people that pull you back into a submissive role. You can start by filtering conversations, reduce time with those who constantly complain, criticize yourself less, consume content that strengthens your identity, not dissolves it. Then, attack habits. If something diminishes you, cut it out. If something strengthens you, repeat it. Even something as simple as changing your posture while walking, adjusting your tone of voice, reviewing your goals weekly, or reading books like The Prince and the 48 Laws of Power creates micro breaks in servile programming. And when these cuts begin, the world responds, people react differently, the environment changes, and you begin to feel a strange kind of expansion, as if something new is being prepared within you, something that will be essential in the next step to completely dominate the environment around you. He learned early on that whoever enters a room as a guest already starts at a disadvantage. Machiavelli would say that politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that the world respects those who claim territory, not those who ask for space. When he crosses a threshold, he doesn't quicken his pace, doesn't try to appear busy, doesn't seek attention. He creates gravity. He adopts a slow and deliberate posture, like someone who understands that predators don't run. They observe, study, calculate. And this, in itself, already shows a calculated use of force. The environment responds to the rhythm of those who control their own presence. That's why people with their own loyal armies, even if symbolic, seem to expand the air around them. They don't try to be loved. They know it's better to be feared than loved when it comes to silent authority. And those who observe may not be able to explain it, but they feel it. Presence is language. And whoever masters this language transforms any room into a psychological fortress. He also understands that silence is worth more than long speeches. Machiavelli taught to avoid being hated, but not to over-explain oneself. Silence is not absence, it is an instrument. When someone talks incessantly, they reveal weaknesses, try to fill their own discomfort, and expose too many thoughts. But when he uses silence, he does the opposite. He forces others to reveal themselves. He lets them project insecurities, intentions, and urgencies. He understands that decisions based on real human nature require listening more than speaking and observing more than reacting. There is no appearance of virtue in silence. There is strength. He who remains silent controls the rhythm, the atmosphere, and even what others believe he thinks. And this kind of power is as elegant as it is brutal. By creating this space, he becomes difficult to read, difficult to predict, difficult to manipulate. And in a world guided by instability, those who are difficult to manipulate become a rare presence. And what's most impressive is how this silent dominance transforms interactions. When he lets others reveal their weaknesses first, he gains a strategic advantage without lifting a finger. Machiavelli would call this virtù and fortuna working together. Virtù in the ability to observe, fortuna in the willingness of others to expose themselves. He creates gravity because he doesn't chase energy. He attracts it. This is the kind of behavior anyone can practice. When entering meetings, slow down your movements. When conversing, keep your pauses short. When listening to someone, tilt your head slightly and let them fill the space. Small gestures, big effects. Over time, the environment stops influencing you. You are the one who influences the environment. And this presence will be the basis for the next weapon in the arsenal, the way you speak, decree, and command without even raising your voice. He knows that most people talk too much and say too little, and that's precisely where Machiavelli would become a master of the art of communicating with power. When someone speaks as if decreeing, not as if begging for approval, something changes in the air. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that people respond more to tone than to content. Therefore, he eliminates softeners like, I think, maybe, or who knows, because he knows that these phrases dilute authority. The end justifies the means when the goal is to express clarity, and clarity is perceived as strength. A low tone, slow pace, and final words, the kind that conclude the conversation, create an immediate presence. It's almost like carrying your own loyal armies just by the way you speak. The observer sees not only voice, but mastery. And mastery, in real human nature, always overcomes hesitation. He speaks less, but means much more. And this contrast opens doors that long speeches never could. The curious thing is that he never defends himself. Machiavelli would say that defending oneself too much is an indirect way of admitting guilt, besides being something any strategist should avoid in order not to be hated or seen as weak. Instead of justifications, he redirects. If someone accuses him, he responds with another question, such as, "What makes you think that?" If someone demands explanations, he simply remains firm in the calculated use of verbal force. Constant adaptability allows him to choose when to speak, how to speak, and, above all, when not to speak, because he knows that after a strong statement, silence is a weapon. A well-placed silence creates tension, mystery, and even respect. It's better to be feared than loved in these moments, because silent fear generates more caution in those around you than any emotional speech. And when the environment hesitates before you, you've already won the conversation before it even begins. This verbal arsenal doesn't require natural talent, but training, and it's something anyone can practice today. He always recommends simple exercises, such as replacing weak phrases with direct statements. Instead of, "I think I can do this," say, "I will do this." Instead of, "Perhaps it would be interesting," say, "This is the best way." It's a calculated micro-use of force that changes your presence instantly. Machiavelli would remind us that decisions based on real human nature depend more on perception than intention. And when someone perceives firmness in you, they treat you differently. This powerfully, almost inevitably, shapes your identity. And as this new voice emerges, it opens the way to an even deeper stage, emotional control. Because it's not enough to master words, you need to master the emotions that fuel them. And that's the next territory he'll teach you to conquer. He knows that no one becomes truly strong until they learn to become emotionally unreachable. This doesn't mean robotic coldness, but rather calculated strength. Machiavelli would say that those who overreact lose control because they exchange politics guided by reality, not ideals, for impulsiveness. And impulsiveness always comes at a high price. He prefers to calculate rather than react because he knows that the end justifies the means when the intention is to preserve his own mental fortitude. Insults become data. Praise becomes data. Silence becomes data. Everything is information. Nothing is personal. This allows him to use emotions as fuel, not as shackles. And when someone tries to manipulate his reaction, he doesn't give them the pleasure of the spectacle. He doesn't change, he doesn't tremble, he doesn't justify himself. He maintains his posture like someone who carries his own loyal armies within himself, even if, outwardly, he is as calm as a rock by the sea. And there's something profoundly strategic about this. By not reacting, he creates discomfort in others. Machiavelli would teach that it's better to be feared than loved when it comes to preserving immediate respect, and the absence of reaction often frightens more than any aggressive response. People are used to controlling others emotionally. When that doesn't work with him, they lose the manual, and losing the manual generates uncertainty. He understands that constant adaptability means adjusting his emotions before adjusting the environment. That's why, in discussions, he takes a few seconds before responding. In conflicts, he observes first. In high-pressure situations, he takes a deep breath, slows down, and lets the impulse die. This control transforms him into an enigma. And enigmas, as every strategist knows, are difficult to attack. Psychological fortress is not a wall, it's a labyrinth. A practical example he always uses is simple. Every time someone tries to provoke you, pause for 3 seconds before responding. It sounds silly, but it works like a weapon. Machiavelli would call this the calculated use of emotional force. You master the moment instead of surrendering it. And over time, your mind begins to operate on another level, where decisions based on real human nature become automatic. Praise ceases to inflate you. Criticism ceases to destroy you. Everything becomes strategy. Everything becomes information. And as this emotional shielding grows, something curious happens. Your identity begins to change. You become someone more centered, more firm, harder to bring down. And a firm identity is the foundation of any power. The next step, inevitably, is to reprogram who you believe you are, and that will define who you can become. He understands that identity is not who a person truly is. It's who they believe they are. And this belief, almost always, has been shaped by fear, rejection, and emotional conditioning. Machiavelli would say that those who live seeking acceptance operate according to romantic ideals, not according to politics guided by reality, not by ideals. And the reality is simple. Those who fear rejection become manipulable. Therefore, eliminating the fear of rejection is one of the first steps to building an unshakable identity. There's no way to carry your own loyal armies when your own inner voice still demands approval. He encourages simple practices, such as exposing yourself to small no's daily, asking for something that will probably be refused, accepting discomfort. Because controlled exposure destroys the idea that rejection is a sentence. Rejection is just a given. And when rejection becomes a given, identity stops shrinking and begins to expand. He also learned that controlling access is more powerful than seeking invitations. Machiavelli would teach that it is better to be feared than loved when it comes to preserving one's own autonomy. And controlling access is exactly that. Stopping begging for entry into environments that don't value you. He redefines boundaries. He decides who enters, who leaves, who stays. He no longer lives for the appearance of virtue, trying to avoid being hated. He lives for inner consistency. He knows that the end justifies the means when the intention is to protect his own growth, and doing so requires constant adaptability, adjusting relationships, distancing himself when necessary, strengthening habits that sustain his new identity. He doesn't try to be perfect. He tries to be undeniable. And this difference transforms everything. Unwavering doesn't mean rigid, it means centered, and centeredness is one of the most silent forms of psychological power. Reprogramming your identity is almost like changing the foundation of a house without tearing it down. It requires strategic patience, observation, and of course decisions based on real human nature, starting with your own. He suggests practical exercises such as writing down every morning 3 characteristics of your unwavering self and acting at least once a day as if that version already existed. It's a subtle form of calculated use of force over your own mind. Over time, this repetition creates such a strong internal narrative that the outside world begins to treat you accordingly. Machiavelli would say that virtù and fortuna work together in this process. Virtù in mental discipline, fortuna in how the environment responds to the new you. And that's where the game changes. Because when identity becomes untouchable, rejection ceases to be a wound. It becomes fuel. And that's exactly the next step, transforming rejection into power. He learned that rejection isn't a personal attack. It's a map. Machiavelli, always guided by politics driven by reality, not ideals, would say that rejection is nothing more than positional information. It shows where you are, where the other person is, and where the game can be won. While most suffer, he observes, real human nature reveals that whoever rejects you reveals more about themselves than about you. Therefore, instead of begging for explanations or trying to avoid being hated, he does the opposite. He strategically disappears. The end justifies the means when the goal is to preserve one's own dignity and increase one's perceived value. And this sudden withdrawal creates something powerful: absence. Absence is a silent form of calculated use of force. Whoever rejected you before now perceives the void, and the void for many is more unsettling than any imperfect presence. He understands that making silence louder than words is an art few master. People trapped by ego react by trying to prove their worth immediately. He doesn't. He lets time work in his favor, as Machiavelli would when strategically manipulating virtù and fortuna. When someone rejects him, he doesn't seek justifications, doesn't try to negotiate, doesn't diminish himself. He withdraws, and in that interval, he evolves. He reads more, strengthens himself, works on his own identity, creates new projects, all based on calculated decisions aligned with his own loyal armies. Meanwhile, the other side feels the contrast. Before he had access, now he doesn't. Before he received quick answers, now he receives silence. Before he dictated the pace, now he's out of sync. Silence becomes a mirror that forces the other to confront their own behavior. And whoever masters silence masters the psychological terrain. And then, when he finally reappears, it's not like before. He reappears as a force that cannot be ignored. Machiavelli would say that this is constant adaptability applied to the social game, returning only when your presence causes discomfort to those who previously underestimated you. Not for revenge, because revenge is emotional, and he has already overcome that phase, but to show that evolution has placed him on another level. Often, he doesn't even say anything. The change itself speaks for him. The firmer posture, the more confident gaze, the more direct tone. It's better to be feared than loved at these times, because fear breeds caution, and caution breeds respect. Thus, rejection becomes energy, energy becomes growth, growth becomes silent authority. And this authority prepares the ground for the next stage, learning to return to the game with calculation, not emotion, something Machiavelli would consider essential for any individual who desires real power. He knows that most return to the game driven by emotion, wounded, proud, needy, a need to prove something, but not him. Machiavelli would say that revenge is emotional, power is calculated, and whoever acts on emotion loses strategic advantage from the first step. Therefore, when he decides to return to an environment, a relationship, or a dynamic, he does so only when his position is stronger than before. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that time is an ally that few know how to use. Time corrects perceptions, destroys illusions, reveals who acted impulsively. He lets time take care of the revenge because the end justifies the means when the objective is to strengthen one's own narrative. And when he returns without haste, without justifications, without promises of reciprocity. He returns as one who already carries his own loyal armies, even if invisible, marching silently behind him. His return is never emotional, always strategic. He reappears as a force, not as a plea. He doesn't seek acceptance, he sets the standard. Machiavelli would teach that it's better to be feared than loved when it comes to re-establishing authority after a period of absence. And he masters this with expertise. His presence, now more solid, calmer, and more assertive, makes the other side realize they lost the more accessible version of him and gained a more expensive one. This is the calculated use of psychological force. He speaks little, or sometimes not at all. He lets the environment read his evolution, and when questioned, he doesn't defend himself, doesn't explain, doesn't relive the past. He simply moves on, remaining faithful to decisions based on real human nature. This return doesn't seem like a reunion. It seems like a repositioning, and repositioning changes entire games. This kind of return is something anyone can practice. He always recommends simple exercises like returning to an environment, a group, a job, an interaction, after a period of intentional evolution. Not to rub in results, but to let the change speak for itself. Read a new book, learn a new skill, adjust your posture, refine your vocabulary. Machiavelli would call this virtù and fortuna, working in alliance. Virtù in the discipline of growing, fortuna in the opportunity to return when the environment least expects it. That's why he never forces a return. He chooses the moment, and by choosing, he creates impact. The environment feels the difference. People react differently. His presence enters like a thin blade, not aggressive, but impossible to ignore. And this transformation inevitably leads him to the next stage, ceasing to be just a player and becoming a legend. He knows there's a point in the journey where something silently changes. You stop pursuing and become the pursued. Machiavelli would say this happens when you abandon a life guided by fragile ideals and begin to operate through politics guided by reality, not ideals. At this stage, you've already understood that the end justifies the means when what's at stake is your own evolution. You don't need to beg for space, prove your worth, or seek recognition. All of that happens naturally when you become someone who carries your own loyal armies within. Identity stabilizes, presence intensifies, hesitation dies, and people begin to react differently. Some respect you, others fear you, others avoid you, and that's okay. It's better to be feared than loved when respect is a priority. Power now comes not from what you say, but from what you no longer need to say. He also realizes that this mastery is not just social, but emotional and psychological. You cease to be someone who responds to the world and become someone who directs the world around you. Machiavelli would call this competence in decisions based on real human nature, and that includes your own. What once unbalanced you now strengthens you. What once diminished you now amplifies you. You become a figure who makes an impact simply by your presence, not by the intensity of your words. It is the calculated use of force in its purest form, gentle, elegant, and decisive. Constant adaptability, which was once an effort, is now natural. And when someone tries to manipulate, test, or provoke you, they perceive something disconcerting. You are no longer emotionally accessible. Not because you have blocked feelings, but because you have rearranged your priorities. And this rearrangement transforms you into someone many would like to be, but few could bear to become. This is where the silent legend is born. That figure who doesn't need a stage to mean something, nor approval to exist. The world recognizes genuine firmness when it sees it. Machiavelli would say that this is the perfect union of virtù and fortuna. Virtù through discipline, fortuna through the opportunity you yourself created. And ironically, it is at this stage that you begin to avoid being hated, not through effort, but because your strategic neutrality prevents unnecessary conflicts. You don't compete, you don't dispute, you don't argue, you decide. And whoever decides transcends. This final transformation has no trumpets or applause. It happens internally like a silent gear that has changed direction. And yet, everyone notices. But what comes after this state? What happens when someone becomes uncontrollable on the outside and unshakable on the inside? That's where the final pact arises, the pact that seals this new way of existing. He knows that getting here requires an intimate, almost secret decision, the decision to break with everything built on illusions. Machiavelli would say that breaking is the way, because only when something breaks does it reveal its true structure. And whoever desires true power needs to operate through politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Otherwise, they remain a slave to their own fantasy. Deprogramming becomes an ally, not a threat. He begins to see each weak thought, each diminishing habit, each draining relationship as symbolic threads that need to be cut with calculated use of force. Unwavering identity is not born from comfort. It is born from confronting what you have avoided for years. It is the moment when you decide to avoid being hated only when it strengthens your inner mastery, never out of fear. And in this process, you realize that the end justifies the means when the means is you being reborn. The subversive vision through the labyrinth is another characteristic of the pact. He no longer sees life as a straight path, but as a complex system where constant adaptability is the greatest weapon. Machiavelli would teach that decisions based on real human nature are not made to please, but to maintain position. And he understands this deeply. He walks through the labyrinth calmly, observing angles, anticipating movements, perceiving intentions that others ignore. He sees invisible games happening between people who believe they are merely conversing. He knows when to speak, when to be silent, when to retreat, and when to advance with his own loyal armies, even if those armies are composed of discipline, emotional intelligence, and self-control. With each step, his vision becomes broader, and the more it broadens, the more he realizes that most people live trapped in illusions that he has already left behind. The pact transforms perception into power. To be reborn, indomitable and uncontrollable, is the pinnacle of this pact. It doesn't mean becoming aggressive, cold, or disconnected, but rather the absolute master of oneself. Machiavelli would say that it is better to be feared than loved when love makes you dependent, but fear makes you autonomous. And he understands this logic not through ego, but through maturity. The new version of him doesn't waste time trying to prove his worth or seeking validation. He creates value. He defines validation. He occupies space without asking permission. His presence becomes so stable that the world around him needs to adapt, not the other way around. And this rebirth doesn't happen in a single day, but in small, symbolic deaths accumulated throughout the journey. Until one day he realizes the pact has been sealed, the transformation is complete, and now it's possible to reveal something even deeper, something that Machiavelli would only whisper to those who reach the end of this path. Ultimately, everything you've learned here only has value if it translates into action, words, decisions, not just stored away theory. Machiavelli always insisted that politics guided by reality, not ideals, is what distinguishes those who desire power from those who truly achieve it. So look at your own life now. Where are you still hesitating? Where are you still over-explaining? Who is still accessing you undeservedly? Who is still dictating the rhythm of your emotions? These answers reveal more about your destiny than any temporary motivation. The end justifies the means when the means is you taking your own path with the calculated use of force. And here's the final provocation. Are you going to continue living according to the narrative they gave you, or are you going to start writing your own? Are you going to keep trying to avoid being hated, or are you finally going to demand respect? Are you going to keep seeking permission? Or are you going to earn your presence? Because ultimately, there is only one question that matters. When are you finally going to decide to become unbeatable? If something inside you has stirred, awakened, or become disturbed, great. That means the transformation has already begun. Now I want to hear from you. Which part of this video made you think the most? What will you change today? Write in the comments. Your voice is part of this process. And before you go, remember, this channel exists for those who have chosen to truly evolve. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and keep walking with me. Here, you learn what the whole world tries to hide.